Let's talk about the three major perspectives of sociology. These are starting points on how to analyze social situations, not only with individuals, but also cities and nations. It's to find out what makes people tick, and how groups in the social structure influences individuals. It's not about winning arguments nor advancing ideology. It is also not about you. It's a scientific method to creating knowledge and allowing others to see it for themselves. These are not the only theories used. There may be more appropriate ones, depending on the thing studied. Material here is pulled from your textbook.
So starting with a functionalist perspective, the way each part of society functions together to contribute to the functioning of the whole.
A functionalist perspective sees society as a structure with interrelated parts designed to meet the biological and social needs of the individuals in that society. Functionalism grew out of the writings of Herbert Spencer, who saw similarities between society and the human body. Just as the various organs of the body work together to keep the body functioning, various parts of society work together to keep society functioning. The parts of society that Spencer referred to were social institutions, or patterns of beliefs and behaviors, to meet social needs, such as government, education, family, healthcare, religion, and the economy. Robert Merton pointed out that social processes often have many functions. Manifest functions are the consequences of a social process that are expected, while latent functions are unintended consequences of a social process. A manifest function of a college education might include gaining knowledge, preparing for a career, and finding a good job. Latent functions of your college years include meeting new people, participating in extracurricular activities, or even finding a spouse. Another latent function here is creating a hierarchy of employment based on the level of education attained. Latent functions can be beneficial, neutral, or harmful. Social processes that have undesirable consequences for the operation of society are called dysfunctions. In education, examples of dysfunction include getting bad grades, truancy, dropping out, not graduating, and not finding suitable employment.
I see that a functionalist approach uses large data such as census surveys on how the workings of individuals affect the whole society, and methods used to accomplish that.
Yes, and ask yourself, how are norms conveyed? How do people work together? Whether voluntarily or not. What does this society look like when stable? What does it look like when not stable? Are there any unintended consequences? And how do individual parts contribute to the whole?
Nice. And what about conflict theory? The way inequities and inequalities contribute to social, political, and power differences, and how they perpetuate power.
Conflict theory uses large data which looks at differences between social groups to see how society is structured, which can favor certain social classes, such as race, gender, ethnicity, religion, age, and the rich, etc. Since census data has variables such as race and income, we might be able to see patterns of how different races have different incomes. Conflict theorists look at society as a competition for limited resources. Karl Marx saw society as being made up of individuals in different social classes who compete for social, material, and political resources such as food and housing, employment, education, and leisure time. Institutions like government, education, and religion reflect this competition in their inherent inequalities and help maintain this unequal social structure. Some social classes are able to obtain and keep more resources than others, and these winners use their power to influence social institutions. The perpetuation of power results in the perpetuation of oppression.
Yes. I know that Gomplevich expanded on Marx's ideas by arguing that war and conquest are the basis of civilizations, and that cultural and ethnic conflicts led to states being defined by a dominant group that had power over other groups. Max Weber agreed with Marx but also believed that, in addition to economic inequalities, inequalities of political power and social structure cause conflict. Weber noted that different groups were affected differently based on education, race, and gender, and that people's reactions to inequality were moderated by class differences and rates of social mobility, as well as by perceptions about the legitimacy of those in power.
Well, some will believe that conflict can help integrate and stabilize a society. He said that the intensity of the conflict varies depending on the emotional involvement of the parties, the degree of solidarity within the opposing groups, and the clarity and limited nature of the goals. Groups work to create internal solidarity, centralize power, and reduce dissent. The stronger the bond, the weaker the discord. Resolving conflicts can reduce tension and hostility and can pave the way for future agreements.
Okay, so a critical theory is a holistic theory and addresses structural issues causing inequality. It must explain what's wrong in current social reality, identify the people who can make changes, and provide practical goals for social transformation. Inequality based on gender or race has more recently been explained in a similar manner and has identified institutionalized power structures that help to maintain inequality between groups. Similarly, critical race theory grew out of a critical analysis of race and racism from a legal point of view. Critical race theory looks at structural inequality based on white privilege and associated wealth, power, and prestige.
Just remember to ask these questions. Who are in these social classes? How does the social structure, such as laws or capitalism, or patriarchy, allow conflict? Beware, this is not conflict between individuals. People are involuntary members in a social class, and all members are subject to this treatment.
And finally, let's talk symbolic interactionism. The way one-on-one interactions and communications behave.
The way one-on-one interactions and communications behave. Oh yes, this is studied using individual-level data in how meanings of society, such as a good person, patriotism, obesity, or driving a nice car, are socially constructed and influence behavior. We might see how someone understands a situation and justifies their behavior by interviewing a person and finding out their background and experiences. This micro-level theory focuses on relationships among people in a society. Communication, the exchange of meaning through language and symbols, is the way in which people make sense of their social worlds. Yes, one type of symbolic interactionist theory is the looking glass self.
It looks like this perspective sees people as being active in shaping the social world rather than simply being acted upon. Bloomer coined the term symbolic interactionism and outlined these basic premises. Humans interact with things based on meanings ascribed to those things. The ascribed meaning of things comes from our interactions with others. These meanings are interpreted by a person when dealing with things in specific circumstances. If you love books, for example, a symbolic interactionist might propose that you learned that books are good or important in the interactions you had with family, friends, school, or church. Maybe your family had a special reading time each week, getting your library card was treated as a special event, or bedtime stories were associated with warmth and comfort.
Yes, social scientists look for patterns of interaction between individuals. Their studies might involve observation of one-on-one interactions. For example, while a conflict theorist studying a political protest might focus on class difference, a symbolic interactionist would be more interested in how individuals in the protesting group interact, as well as the signs and symbols protesters use to communicate their message. Goffman used a dramaturgical or theater as an analogy for social interaction and recognized that people's interactions showed patterns of cultural scripts. He argued that individuals were actors in a play. We switched roles, sometimes minute to minute, for example, from student or daughter to dog walker. Because it can be unclear what part a person may play in a given situation, he or she has to improvise his or her role as the situation unfolds. These studies are more likely to use qualitative research methods, such as interviews or participant observation, because they seek to understand the symbolic worlds in which individuals live. Constructivism is an extension of symbolic interaction theory which proposes that reality is what humans cognitively construct it to be. We develop social constructs based on interactions with others, and those constructs that last over time are those that have meanings which are generally accepted by most within the society. This is often used to examine what's defined as deviant within a society. There is no absolute definition of deviance, and different societies have constructed different meanings for deviance, as well as associating different behaviors with deviance.
Is this a way to see it? What you believe you're to do if you find a wallet in the street. In the use, turning the wallet into local authorities would be considered the appropriate action, and to keep the wallet would be seen as deviant. In contrast, Many Eastern societies would consider it much more appropriate to keep the wallet and search for the owner yourself. Turning it over to someone else, even the authorities, would be considered deviant behavior.
Yes. You can use the looking glass self-theory. You are aware that people are judging you. You imagine what they see and think of you. You adjust to what you think they see. When using symbolic interaction, just remember to ask, how is meaning of the culture learned? How does this meaning affect behavior? What effect does this understanding have? And how is this meaning retaught?
Thank you, Professor. That was easy.